This game released in 1993 in Asia and was made by the Chinese company Sachen. This game is an unlicensed Game Boy game. The genre of the game is hard to describe. I would call it a Pac-Man clone. You play as a car, the levels have white blocks and black blocks. On the black blocks you can drive, which makes them grey. If all the black blocks around such a white block are grey, the white block transforms in a game-pausing animation to a background image. That's it, you can just move around. There are 2 different speed settings to make the game more interesting. Every 5 stages you get the great reward of seeing the background image complete, and you get a different background image and a new background track. The presentation of the game sucks. There are mostly different colored blocks and nothing more. In the start screen I thought my Game Boy broke. The music can be a bit annoying and there's just one background image that changes all 5 stages is low. At least the enemies have different sprites. I'll give the presentation 1 out of 5 points. The gameplay is not really there. The game is a bad Pac-Man clone. The enemies are boring and you just drive around, and for what? To see the same background image that you already saw parts of for 5 stages one time completely. I give the gameplay 1 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No. It's barely a game. I get why that didn't get licensed. It sucks. I give the game overall 1 of 5 points because it is working. This game is a port of a PlayStation 1 game, was developed by Vilas in Dubai, and released exclusively in Europe in 1998. V-Rally is a racing game. You always start at position 10, and if you're doing good at dodging the obstacles that spawn beneath and sometimes on the street, you will catch up to the other cars and make your way to position 1. The game features 4 playable cars with different stats and 10 maps. The maps have different streets, background images and obstacles. Some tracks even have special weather. In England, for example, it rains. There are 2 modes, Arcade and Championship. In the Arcade mode, you play in every level a few different tracks and you need to survive by reaching certain checkpoints before your time runs out. If you pass, you unlock the next level. To save, the game uses a password system. In the Championship mode, you play different tracks and you get points depending on your position and your time. The game looks great. In the selection screens, the cars rotate and have a 3D look to them. The tracks all look nice and have unique obstacles. Tracks even have little mountains to go up. You can do jumps and have an accident with an animation. We are talking about the original Game Boy. For that console, the graphics are perfect. The background music in the menu is nice, but sadly there's no background music during the driving. I give the presentation 4.5 out of 5 points. The gameplay is very arcade-like. You try to take the curves good and avoid the obstacles without losing speed, and from time to time you pass a car. If you have an accident, most likely the other car will overtake you again. The maps and cars all feel a bit different from each other, and the game's a lot of fun. The other cars feel more like obstacles and checkpoints and not really like other drivers, but that is often the case in such arcade races. I give the gameplay 4 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? Yes. Woo! This game is getting everything out of the hardware of the Game Boy. Try it, it's a lot of fun. If you're missing the colors, then try the Game Boy Color version. We didn't review it yet, but I'm sure we will somewhere, when the lucky wheel decides so. This game with the, at the same time, clear and unclear title, was developed by Marionette and released exclusively in Japan in 1990. In this early Game Boy game you can play 3 different card games, 5-card draw poker, blackjack and page 1. Additionally, you can let the game tell you your future. We will do that one later. I'm very happy with the presentation. It's an early Game Boy game, but all the important information is all the time visible, and that while keeping the screen clear. The cards are easy to see, and in page 1 you can see the direction, the multiplayer to draw hand cards, and the wish towards the future change. There's even background music during playing. Not even all the Game Boy Advance games have that. I think the presentation is doing nothing too special, but a very solid job. I give the presentation 3 out of 5 points. The gameplay is what you expect. The card games were good and you have a high score showing your winnings. The game even comes with a 2-player hot seat mode. A score cannot be saved. Only thing that was hard to figure out was how to save page 1 before playing the second to last card in page 1. It is by holding the select button while playing the card. If you don't do that, you need to draw 3 more cards again. I give the gameplay 3 out of 5 points. Before we get to the important question, let's see my fortune. Okay, I have poor health, high money, poor strength and good knowledge, and my color to wear is green. In total my fortune is sad man. At least I got high money, I knew that channel will be a success. Thank you Card Game for proving it. If you want to see your own fortune, write in the comment and I'll add Card Game also to your fortune. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? I guess. If you want to play poker, blackjack or page 1 on the Game Boy, then sure, there's a well-made version of that. But it is exactly that. Not more, not less. I give the game 3 out of 5 points. This game was developed by Red Company and released 1994 with different titles in Japan, the US and in Europe. The game has extra colors on the Super Game Boy, and that's also the version you see in this review. It is a sequel to GB Genjin 1, Bonk's Adventure, or BC Kid 1, depending on the region. Apparently the world's split in half and it is for you to save the world, I guess. Besides the intro and the outro, there's literally no story. You play Bonk, a caveman baby that uses his head to defeat enemies. You can run, jump, headbutt, climb and crawl. If Bonk eats meat, he transforms randomly into one out of 3 versions. Master Bonk, who can jump further, Monster Bonk, who can defeat enemies easier, and Stealth Bonk, who can break into doors to get different boni. There are 6 levels, and in every level there are multiple smaller screens and at least one boss. The last level is a boss gauntlet against all other 5 bosses and the end boss. The presentation of the game is really good. The sprites have great humor and the graphics in total are well made. I like the animations, like the crawling animation, and that Bonk can change its appearance based on the meat. The music is okay. That the UI has that cave look to it, and that little Bonk sprite when you press pause shows that the game was made with an eye for details. I give the presentation 4 out of 5 points. The gameplay is really fun, and the controls work good. I always felt in control of Bonk during my playthrough. The lack of a story is a little problem, because you go from one level to the other and suddenly you are underwater or in a cave or on a train, but you have no idea why. I like that they put a lot of variety in the levels, but sometimes it felt like the levels are not using the mechanics very well. The most levels are very easy, and while they have settings like underwater or in space, which change the physics a bit, the game never really felt different to play. The same problems exist with the upgrades. Because it is random which one you get, the levels never use the abilities much. The bosses are mostly beaten by spamming the attack, and it is a bit disappointing that the final level is a boss gauntlet of the previous bosses. In such a short game, it took me around 1 hour to finish it, I don't need to see the same bosses twice. The last level is also the most difficult, because you will run someone out of lives. And after that you start near at the beginning of the level. Besides the problems, the game is a fun playthrough. I give the gameplay 3 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? Yes. It's a fun short playthrough and worth the hour it takes. I give the game overall 3.5 out of 5 points. This game was developed by Factor 5 as a port of the SNES version and released in 1994 in the US and Japan and in 1995 in the EU. In this review you see the Super Game Boy version that added a few colors and better sound. Aliens attacked the Earth and now it's time for revenge. The game is a run and gun. You run, jump, climb and crawl around while shooting everything that moves. To do that there are different weapons like a flamethrower or a shotgun that you pick up as upgrades. Every second level is from a top-down view. There are 5 levels in total, each with a boss at the end, and the game is saved via password system. The game looks good. I like the enemy designs, especially the bosses. For the scope of the Game Boy, the bosses look quite epic. The player sprite is looking good too, and it always feels like a lot is going on the screen. To allow that amount of sprites, the sprite flicker if a lot is going on. The background on the first stage with the broken city looks nice, but in the later stages the background was sometimes just plain white. The music is good and there are multiple tracks. I give the presentation 4 out of 5 points. The game is hard. Already in the first level I died off and needed to hit continue multiple times. At the same time you always feel in control of the character, so you don't have the feeling that the game is unfair. The running, jumping and shooting feels good and the game doesn't lag even if a lot is going on. The top-down stages were a bit boring and the objectives in both of them are the same. Find some things and destroy them. At least you get directions where the things are. I'm very impressed with the controls. They are the most important thing in such a run and gun game, and they managed to get them done perfectly. Sadly the game is with 5 levels, 2 of them top-down. A bit short. Only the high difficulty makes it feel longer. I give the gameplay 4 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? Just if you like run and gun games. The game is very well made and fun to play, but just if you like the genre. If you don't, you will easily get frustrated by the high difficulty. The game is easier than its SNES counterpart, but that doesn't make it easy. This game was developed by the Code Monkeys and released in the US and Europe in 1991. It is a run and gun game in which you shoot yourself through 10 levels killing aliens. The levels are quite big and more free roam with different ways to go. There are multiple weapons you can use. You have a normal gun that gets upgraded with power-ups you can collect on the levels, a laser that can shoot in a 360-degree angle, and multiple special weapons. The most unique special weapon is turning yourself into a buzzsaw. The game looks okay. In the most levels you just have a plain background, also the foregrounds are mostly very basic. The player sprite is fine but nothing special. The enemies can be hard to see, they are often just like a pixelated mess. Later in the levels that play inside you have some basic but cool looking backgrounds. In total it can be difficult to see what's going on. I give the presentation 2 out of 5 points. The gameplay has some issues. While the normal running and shooting is fine, you can just shoot up with the laser, but to activate the laser you need to press and hold shooting, and in that time you cannot move. A lot of enemies come from up and hitting them is difficult. The jumping also doesn't feel so good. The main issue here is that platforms are often directly over each other. The game is not using that you can go through them from one side kind of platform. So you have to do an awkward left-right jump. There's also no hit animation. You just lose life, but you don't really know why. The more open level design is cool, but I have the feeling that the limitations of the game gets highlighted by the design. I give the gameplay 2 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No. It is a bit unfair to compare the game to Cobra The Alien Wars because they are 4 years apart, but they are the same genre and Cobra is just doing it so much better. The movement and controls feel more fluid there. If you want to play a run-again game on the Game Boy, I would say stick with Cobra The Alien Wars. I give the game overall 2 out of 5 points. Ultraman Chou Toushi Gekiden on the original Game Boy. This game was developed by Angel and released in 1994 exclusively in Japan. The footage for this review is from the Super Game Boy version that added extra colors and better music. In the game you jump, fly and fight as Ultraman through different levels. There are platformer levels, level where you're flying through space, and boss fights. You can do base attacks and different special moves. The game looks, especially in the Super Game Boy version, very nice. The Ultraman sprite is big and quite detailed. The level designs on the other hand are very basic. One problem is that the enemy render distance is too short. Even enemies that should be on your current screen are not always visible if you're too far away. The music is great, it's upbeat and always pushing you forward. I give the presentation 3 out of 5 points. The game is fun. The levels have some variety and never overstays their welcome. Before you get annoyed by a level, it is already over. The jumping feels a bit floaty and the fights can be won by spamming, but they're still fun. The game is with 25 minutes very short. I give the gameplay 3 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? Yes. It got some clear issues, but it's a short and fun playthrough. I give the game overall 3 out of 5 points. Rodland. Also known in Japan as Yusei Monogatari Rodland on the original Game Boy. This game was developed by Eurocom and released 1993 in Europe and Japan. In this port of an arcade game, you play as one of 2 sisters and try to rescue your mother. All the story there is one small screen. You can walk, climb ladders and attack the enemies with your wand, slamming them against the ground. When you kill an enemy, it drops a weapon that activates directly when you pick it up. If you collect all flowers or kill all enemies in a level, you go to the next one. The game looks okay. The sprites of the 2 playable characters and also the sprites of the enemies look good. The level backgrounds are easy but look fine. The foreground in these levels have nothing special. The game has some music that is running all the time. The music can get annoying, but is in general not bad. I give the presentation 2.5 out of 5 points. The gameplay is very arcade-like, and it reminded me a bit of the original Donkey Kong. You always just have one screen as a level and the objective is quickly done, which lets you continue to the next screen. Sadly, there's not much gameplay. The levels all feel very samey, and the game was not much fun. I give the gameplay 1 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No, I don't think it's worth to play. I looked at the arcade version of the game and I think it's a good port of that. It was just not a good arcade game, or it didn't age very well. I give the game overall 2 out of 5 points. Trax, also known as Totsugeki Ponkotsu Tank in Japan. Trax was developed by HAL Laboratory and released in Europe, the US and Japan in 1991. It is a virtual scrolling shooter in which you play a tank that can go, turn, and shoot. In the main mode you fight through 5 levels with multiple bosses each. Enemies can drop upgrades and make your weapons stronger. Next to the main mode is another mode in which you can fight against up to 3 bots in different levels. For a 1991 Game Boy game, the game is looking great. The own sprites, the enemies and the surroundings look very good. I like that the levels have destructible objects. There's also some nice music. The game even has their own intro and end of game cutscene. Not many Game Boy games did that. Some areas look a little bit pale, but all in all the level design is very nice. I give the presentation 4 out of 5 points. The gameplay is what you would expect from a vertical scrolling shooter. You drive, mostly up, and shoot at everything you find. The upgraded weapons are nice, but mostly you don't feel so much stronger with them. The basic cannon is quite strong, especially when you're close, since the game lets you shoot again as soon as the old projectile is destroyed. The game has one big flaw. It slows down when a lot is going on. There's often a lot going on, so it slows down quite a lot, which is a shame. Besides that, the game works fine. The game is also quite short, with just 5 levels, and a big part of the last level is a boss gauntlet of the previous bosses. It gives the gameplay 4 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? Yes. It is a short 25-minute playthrough, but a fun one. The slowdown is a shame, but besides that, the game is really good. I give the game overall 4 out of 5 points. Super Street Basketball 2 on the original Game Boy. This game was developed by C-Lab and released in 1994 exclusively in Japan. In this review sees a Super Game Boy version that added extra colors and better music. It is a game about street basketball in which you choose different players and play 3 vs 3 or 1 vs 1 basketball matches. Every player has different sprites and stats. There are no season or story mode, just an exhibition-like mode in which you choose your own team and the opponent's team to play against each other. When dunking, there's a special minigame in which you need to press A in the right moment to actually dunk. The game looks fine. The players all have their own sprites and look good. The coin toss animation and the dunking animation look very cool. Besides that, there is not much to see. There's just one chord and just 6 sprites. The music is good but repeats quite quickly. Sometimes sprites overlap each other, which can look a bit buggy. That gives the presentation 3 out of 5 points. There's not much variety in this game. There's nothing to unlock, no story mode or even arcade mode. Just exhibition matches and that's it. That's sadly not much content. The gameplay itself feels like the available modes, a bit boring. There's not much to do. I'm happy about the dunking minigame, but besides that there's not much interesting going on. Especially the defense is boring. You can just dash a bit into the other one so that he loses the ball. Defending from that while having the ball doesn't exist. I give the gameplay 2 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No. There's no content and the gameplay itself is not interesting. If you want to play a basketball game on the Game Boy, I would suggest the Game Boy Color game NBA Showtime NBA on NBC that we reviewed as the first game in the series. I give the game overall 2.5 out of 5 points. Zool, Ninja of the Nth Dimension on the original Game Boy. This game was developed by Gremlin Graphics and is a port of the Amiga home computer game. In the game you play a gremlin ninja called Zool. It is a platformer game which you run, jump and climb through different levels. The game looks okay, the sprites are easily recognizable but the backgrounds are often very pale. The graphics of the game are nothing special. The real star of the show is the song. The background music is great. I mean, it's just the one song, but that song is a banger. It feels like they built a jump and run game around that song. Mainly because of the song, I give the presentation 3 out of 5 points. This game is hard and not always out of the right reasons. The game feels in the first moment fine, it's a fast-paced, Sonic-like platformer, but there are 2 big flaws. First is the attack. Sometimes I can attack and sometimes not. Maybe there are some mechanics that I don't know, but it felt unreliable and unresponsive. The second big flaw. Enemies respawn directly if you didn't see their spawn point for 1 second. That is so unbelievably annoying that it makes the game hard to play. I give the gameplay 1 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No, unless you hate yourself and want to punish yourself for all the bad things you did in life. In that case, go ahead. I give the game overall 2 out of 5 points.
Gator, also known in Japan as Shippū on the original Game Boy. This game was developed by Natsume and released in 1999 in Europe and the US and in 1992 in Japan. The box art of the 2 games is a bit different per region. Europe and US went with the edgy, action, realistic, and Japan with the cute. The game is a puzzle or jump and run game and is very similar to older card game. In Gator you play an alligator that fights with its tail. In every level you need to open all the chests to find the key to go to the next room. In the first areas you can choose the order of the levels freely and sometimes there is a boss fight. The game is saved by a password system. The game looks quite nice. I like the sprites of the player characters and of the enemies. The level designs are nothing special, especially in the underwater parts. It can be hard to see if you are underwater right now or not. The bosses look fine. I give the presentation 3 out of 5 points. The gameplay is actually fun. In the beginning I thought the game might be too easy, but the later levels can get quite tricky. The jump is very floaty, but the game is using that nicely. I also like the boss fights, just the last one was a bit easy. The respawning of the enemies in the levels can be annoying, but at least the enemies cannot hurt you directly. There's a fair time until they actually spawn. The game is using its mechanics very well. I give the gameplay 4 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? Yes. It's a fun playthrough that takes around 90 minutes with an increase in difficulty per area. I give the game overall 4 out of 5 points. Shippū Iron League on the original Game Boy. This game was developed by Sun L and released 1994 exclusively in Japan. It is a platformer based on the anime Shippū Iron Leaguer. In the game you play a team of Iron Leaguers that are robots that are all good in a certain sport. In the story mode you start with a baseball and karate leaguer, and after every area you fight against a different leaguer that will join your team afterwards. Every leaguer got their own HP bar, attack and sometimes a unique way of movement. You can freely switch between the leaguers by pressing start or select. There's also survival high score mode, where you start with all the leaguers unlocked already, and you do one stage of each area and try to get a good time. There's a last mode in which you play minigames of 3 different leaguers that shows them during their sport. The game is looking really nice. I like the sprites of the players and enemies, and also the backgrounds look good. The main menu theme is great, and during the gameplay you also have always background music. There are even little cutscenes with dialogues and different background music. They put a lot of effort into the presentation. I give the presentation 4 out of 5 points. The game is fun to play. Especially because you can switch between the characters, they all are at least a bit different. The level designs are nothing special, but work good. That you have 3 modes in such a game is great variety. The only problem I saw was that your leaguers with special movement can die, and then you can be stuck because you need that movement. I give the gameplay 4 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? Yes. It is a great platform and really fun. I give the game overall 4 out of 5 points. Double Yakuman II on the original Game Boy. This game was developed by ImageSoft and released 1993 exclusively in Japan. The game is a mahjong game. Not a mahjong solitaire game, but a real mahjong game. The good thing for me is that I know how to play mahjong, so I actually knew what to do in that game. The bad thing for me is that I know Chinese mahjong, and at least in China there are a lot of different rule variations depending on the region. And I'm not sure if it is in Japan more clear, but there were no rules or anything like that for the specifics, so you just got to know. The presentation is good. I like that it shows a black background, which makes the game easier to look at. The stones are recognizable and the information is visible. I like that the enemies are not just named, but have little faces, so you can play against some grandpa or a penguin. The game has 3 background tracks and you can choose which one to use. The presentation is doing nothing special, but a solid job. I give the presentation 3 out of 5 points. The gameplay is exactly how you imagine mahjong, but it's great. Sadly there's no rule clarifications, which I would have liked, and there's no story mode or anything like that. Since the gameplay does its job, but not more, I give the gameplay 3 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? Just if you're a fan of mahjong and know how to play. The game is not explaining anything, but if you're a fan, I think you will have fun with it. I give the game overall 3 out of 5 points. Peetan on the original Game Boy. This game was developed by Interstate and released 1991 exclusively in Japan. In Peetan you are a mother chicken that tries to save her little chickens from an evil dog. You do that by laying eggs and shooting your children up with a seesaw. I guess just the hatched children are worth saving and not the eggs. The game is a very arcade-like puzzler. Every level has a different setup and you try to save the chickens. All 5 levels is a little bonus stage where you can get a chicken back. The game looks okay, nothing too special. The chicken sprites look fine, the enemy looks fine, and there's a little background music that changes whenever the enemy is trying to eat the chicken. I give the presentation 2 out of 5 points. The game is a minigame. You just lay the eggs and shoot the chickens up. There's not much to do and it's not so interesting. It is fun for a little, very little while. I give the gameplay 2 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No. It is a fine execution of the game idea, but not very interesting. You won't miss anything with never playing that game. I give the game overall 2 out of 5 points. Panel no Ninja Kesamaru on the original Game Boy. This game was developed by Epoch and Sas Sakata and released 1992 exclusively in Japan. In this puzzle game you play a ninja that in every level needs to find the key and the door to finish it. To do that you can switch the floor plates around and move blocks. Sometimes you find some upgrades that let you throw ninja stars or other weapons to defend yourself against the enemies. The game looks fine but unspectacular. The presentation is really basic. There is background music and sound effects and they are okay. The level design is simple, there are no decorations or anything like that, it is very functional. I give the presentation 2 out of 5 points. The basic idea of the game is fine. There are 3 stages and in every stage are multiple levels that you can do in any order you want. The levels are really fast but can get tricky. There is not much more to say, what you see in this review is what you get. I give the gameplay 2.5 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? Not really. The formula is getting old quickly and there's not much fun in this game. I give the game overall 2 out of 5 points. Heavyweight Championship Boxing on the original Game Boy. This game was developed by Toushi and released 1990 in Japan and North America. In Japan the game is just called Boxing. In Heavyweight Championship Boxing, you box. In the beginning you can choose your fighter and your knockout punch and then you play in an arcade mode fashion against the other opponents. Between every fight you can upgrade the stat of your choosing. The game changes between a top view mode of the ring and a POV fight scene. The game looks for an early Game Boy game quite good, but especially the backgrounds and between the fight scenes are very easy. The POV scene looks fine and there's some background music. Because it is an early Game Boy game I give the presentation 3 out of 5 points. The gameplay is just like the presentation, fine but simple. You fight against different opponents, but the game never really feels different. I like that I put that upgrade system in and multiple boxes to choose from. That is more than the minimum. I give the gameplay 3 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? Not really. I think it is a fine game, but also nothing special that would make the game worth playing. I give the game overall 3 out of 5 points. Aguri Suzuki F1 Super Driving on the original Game Boy. This game was developed by Pixel and released 1993 exclusively in Japan. It was released on the Super Nintendo and on the Game Boy. The game is a Formula 1 racing game. You drive from a behind-the-car perspective through different tracks. There are time races and races against other racers. After every race you can visit different shops to buy new parts and change the setup and reset the stats of your car. The game is saved by a password system. The game looks quite nice. The race itself looks very easy, but the menus have little animations for every action, like a little pit stop to change the setup of your car. That is very charming. Besides that, there is not much to see. There is also no background music during the racing. I give the presentation 3 out of 5 points. The gameplay is fine, but also not very special. You can see the whole map to see the curves coming, that is very handy. Besides that, there is not much interesting. I give the gameplay 2 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? Not really. I think it is a worse version of V-Rally Championship Edition, which makes sense since V-Rally came out 5 years later, but now I would recommend playing V-Rally. I give the game overall 2.5 out of 5 points. Kirby Star Stacker on the original Game Boy. This game was developed by HAL Laboratory and released in Europe, North America and Japan in 1997. In this review you see the Super Game Boy version of the game that added colors and better music. This Kirby game is a Tetris-like puzzler. You need to collect stars, and you do that if the stars are between the 2 same friends of Kirby. There are some different modes, like challenges and a survival mode, where you can play until you're defeated to get the high score. The game looks very good. The Kirby games are all well made and this one is too. Everything is very cute. There's nice background music and the gameplay looks nice. At the same time the presentation is quite easy. Suitable for that kind of game, but still nothing too impressive. I give the presentation 3 out of 5 points. The game is really fun. The challenges in the mode are great and the endless mode is also very good. It is very Tetris-like, but has its own mechanics and something unique. I give the gameplay 4 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? Yes, it is a very good game. I like the gameplay and such puzzles age very well. I give the game overall 3.5 out of 5 points. Tom and Jerry 2, Frantic Antics, also known as Tom and Jerry 2 the movie in Europe and Tom and Jerry Part 2 in Japan. So this game was developed by Beam Software and released in North America and Europe in 1993 and in Japan in 1994. It is a jump and run game featuring Tom and Jerry as playable characters. It is based on Tom and Jerry the movie from 1992. In the game you play through multiple levels, always playing Tom or Jerry. The levels are typical jump and run levels with some variety. They are the run from left to right, find a specific thing, and scrolling background levels. Tom and Jerry both plays the same and can only jump and do a rolling attack. The game looks fine, but nothing more. The sprites are okay and the backgrounds look quite nice. I also like the background music. Between the levels is sadly just a picture, and that is always the same, and the title of the level with the objective. While the game follows the plot of the movie, there's not much to explain the plot. Just the name and the description of the level and one line of dialogue at the end of each level. I give the presentation 3 out of 5 points. The game plays fine. The running and jumping feels good and the levels have the right length to stay fine. But at the same time there's also nothing special about the gameplay. It is a standard jump and run game. Additionally, the attack, the only one you have, is done by running and pressing during running, down, forward and B. That is not working very reliable and is a huge problem. The B button is not used in a different way, so why not just make the roll attack by pressing B? I give the gameplay 3 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No. It is not a bad game, but also offers nothing special that would make me play the game again. I give the game 3 out of 5 points. Ultima, Runes of Virtue on the original Game Boy. This game was developed by Origin System and released 1991 in Japan and 1992 in North America. In Japan the game is just called Ultima. The game is part of the famous Ultima video game series. It is a RPG dungeon crawler. You choose one of 4 characters, all with slightly different abilities, and then you can go directly nearly everywhere and try to find the runes. The game looks easy and boring. I didn't really like the presentation. The sound is fine, but the graphics are, even for the Game Boy, very basic. There are no real backgrounds and the objects in the dungeons look easy and get repeated all the time. The enemy sprites are also nothing special. I give the presentation 2 out of 5 points. The gameplay was for me the same. Everything felt very basic. You can have one attack on each button based on the equipped weapon and that's it. It can be hard to hit the enemies, especially when they move around fast. There's no level system based on experience, so that killing enemies never feels satisfying. At least the game is safe by battery save. I give the gameplay 2 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No. I know that Ultima is a big series with many fans, so it hurts me to say, but no. For me, without nostalgia to that game, I don't see anything special that would make it worth playing. I give the game overall 2 out of 5 points. Onigashima Pachinko-Ten on the original Game Boy. This game was developed by Marionette and released exclusively in Japan in 1991. I am not sure if I understood the game, maybe not, but I review based on what I understood. You run around a casino, you can play at different tables, the always same minigame. You throw balls into a machine and depending where they land you get points. That's it. The overworld looks more or less same in every room. The machines all look the same until you use them. Then you get a few details and you can play on them. The tables look okay, but also not very special, and the casino looks extremely bad and confusing. There is some background music. I give the presentation 1.5 out of 5 points. The gameplay is throwing a ball in at different tables and hope to get more points. I don't really get it, but that's all I saw, so yeah. I give the gameplay 1 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No. Playing the game is a bit like watching a screensaver. Just somehow worse. and gives the game overall 1 out of 5 points. Mahou Kishi Rayearth II, the missing color on the original Game Boy. This game was developed by Pandora Box and released 1995 exclusively in Japan. In this review you see the Super Game Boy version that added more colors and better music. The game got a fan translation that I used, released by Piers Hillock. This game is the second in the series. It is a classic RPG. The thief stole all the colors and because of that the world is starting to crumble. It is the task of you, a group of 3 magical knights, to get the colors back. You do that in a typical RPG fashion. Run around, kill enemies, level up and destroy the bosses. The game is saved by a battery save. The game is looking very great. It has good background music. The overworld looks not too special but fine. The fights, while having the standard look, provide a charm through the fighting animations. I like that the story uses the limitations of the Game Boy with the missing color storyline. I think for a Game Boy RPG that is nearly the best you can do. I don't think the voice lines were the best idea, but still. I give the presentation 4.5 out of 5 points. The gameplay has sadly some issues. First of all, the gameplay is good. It is a standard RPG gameplay. Sadly, it comes with the standard RPG issues. The encounter rate is way too high. All of you stab something new is attacking you. There's no big world map like other RPGs have, and the game feels more like a dungeon crawler, where you go from one dungeon to the next. I give the gameplay 3 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? Just for genre fans. The game looks good and is well made, but the high encounter rate can really get annoying quickly. I give the game overall 3.5 out of 5 points. Today we review Maru's Mission, or Oira Jajamaru Sekai Daiboken, on the original Game Boy. This game was developed by Toushi and released in 1990 in Japan and 1991 in North America. I'm not sure if anyone likes the style of the cover of the American version, but for me it looks like they really tried hard to not sell any copies of the game. It is an action jump and run. You run with ninjas through the levels, defeat a mini-boss and a main boss in each level, and try to get back your girlfriend. She got kidnapped for some reason, I'm not really clear why. You can run, jump and shoot Turrican. The enemies sometimes drop power-ups that can do all kind of weird things. Half of the time I had no idea what's going on. The levels are quite short. For an early Game Boy game the game looks fine, and it has background music and sound effects, which sounds like nothing special, but not every game of that time has. I think the presentation is fine. I like the backgrounds and the character designs. The main character looks very cute. Since it is such an early Game Boy game, I give the presentation 4 out of 5 points. Gameplay is okay. The attacks feel fine, but the jump feels really floaty. That is also because you can jump extremely high. I'm not a big fan of that jump. Sometimes it feels like the game has a slowdown whenever there are multiple enemies on the screen. The levels and bosses are nothing special gameplay wise too. I give the gameplay 3 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No. It is not bad, but also not so good. The levels are short, the boss is boring, there's nothing that stands out that would make it worth playing today. I give the game overall 3 out of 5 points. Today we review Battleship, or in Japan known as Kaisen Game Navy Blue, on the original Game Boy. This game was developed by Pack and Video and released 1989 in Japan and 3 years later, 1992, in North America and the PAL regions. The game is, like the title suggests, a game about the board game Battleship. You play in different stages, always, well, battleships. But they add some special abilities like multi-shot or scanners. The presentation is fine. The game boards are easy recognizable and there are little animations for shooting the rockets and hitting or missing ships. There's also at least one music track. There's not much more to say. It looks like I would imagine a Battleship game on the Game Boy. I give the game 3.5 out of 5 points. The gameplay is battleships. It is not more and not less than that. The special abilities make the game a bit more fast, but besides that all state classical Battleship. I give the gameplay 3 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? I guess so. If you want to, for whatever reason, play Battleship on the original Game Boy, then this is as good as it gets. I give the game overall 3 out of 5 points. Today we review Night Quest on the original Game Boy. This game was developed by Lena and released in 1991 in Japan and 1992 in North America. The monsters of the world got more aggressive and attack now even in broad daylight. It needs a night to go on an epic quest to bring balance back, and so your adventure begins. The story of the game is extremely simple and is told in a few lines. This game is a grind-heavy, simple RPG in which you fight your way through the world. The game looks and sounds quite good. The enemy designs are cool, and whenever you fight you go in that 2D perspective. Different attacks and spells have different animations, and even the enemies have a variety of attacks. We are talking about the original Game Boy in 1991, so the expectations shouldn't be too high, but I found the presentation of the game quite good. The music is also solid. I give the presentation 4 out of 5 points. The gameplay is kind of as simple as you can make an RPG. You can choose between 4 different attacks that all have slightly different animations, and all the enemies are weak against a certain attack. There are also healing and magic items. You run around and grind heavily to get better level and equipment like higher level swords, and then you defeat bosses. It is as simple as that. While it is nothing crazy innovative, it is simple and fun. The developers even put it in the option to make the fights faster and the money income a bit higher, because they knew how grind heavy the game is. I appreciate that. I give the gameplay 3.5 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? Just if you're a fan of grinding. The game has not much else, but every level feels like you get stronger and you can go further, so it is motivating. If you're a fan of a light-hearted grind RPG, you should go for it. I give the game overall 3.5 out of 5 points. Today we review International Super Soccer, or in Japan known as World Soccer GB on the original Game Boy. This game was developed by Konami and released in 1998 everywhere. The game is part of the International Super Soccer series, the Konami football game series before Pro Evolution Soccer. The game focuses on the national teams and has many different European and Asian teams. The game uses different names and the replay names because of missing licenses. You can play single matches, penalty shootouts, or a World Cup with previous qualification rounds. The game is a late Game Boy game and it looks quite impressive. The sprites for the players are not much varied, all players kinda look the same, but they are looking very good. The field is big and there are actually 11 players on the field. Sadly, there's no background music during the matches, and stuff like throw-ins have a whole screen to show what's happening. I give the presentation 3.5 out of 5 points. Reviewing the gameplay is not so easy. On one hand, I'm very impressed by the game. They took a game that was way too big for a Game Boy, but still managed to port it in a good playable version. Yet it is a big and quite complex game. You can choose different formation and strategies. The only problem is, they kinda took the fun out of it. The game, while impressive, is simply not much fun to play. It is too serious and realistic for the Game Boy. It feels slow, on rails and predictive. I give the gameplay 2 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend the game? No. I like football games and this one is an impressive one for the original Game Boy, but sadly not a fun one. I give the game overall 3 out of 5 points. Today we review Wordtris on the original Game Boy. This game was developed by Real Time Associates and released exclusively in North America in 1992. Wordtris is exactly what you think it is. A Tetris game where you make words instead of lines to make them disappear. It is the child of Scrabble and Tetris. There's not much else to say. The game looks okay and has some fine music. They didn't take any risk with the presentation. It looks exactly like you would imagine Tetris with Scrabble blocks. Sadly, they didn't try to give it anything unique or interesting from a presentation point. I give the presentation 2 out of 5 points. Gameplay-wise, it is Tetris with letters. Scrabble Tetris. Scriptris. Wordtris. It is not a bad idea, but also very uncreative. I don't know, it didn't impress me very much and wasn't that fun to play. But they also didn't do anything wrong. The developers really kept it on the safe side with this one. I give the gameplay 3 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No. It is just not as fun and addicting as Tetris. I think it is a downgrade, but for people that really like Scrabble it might be an upgrade. I give the game overall 2.5 out of 5 points. Today we review Taz-Mania II, or in the PAL regions just known as Taz-Mania on the original Game Boy. This game was developed by Beam Software and released in 1993 in the PAL regions and 4 years later, in 1997, in North America. It is a platformer starring the Tasmanian Devil as the main character. Two crocodiles try to catch you and you escape their traps and kill all living things you see on the way as a deadly twister. The presentation of the game is very easy. The backgrounds are simple and the music track, well I'm happy there is one, is repeating itself often. The sprites look okay, but not much more. I give the presentation 2 out of 5 points. The gameplay is fast-paced. From the basic idea, it's a bit like a Sonic game. You can make the typical twister, and in that time you are nearly invincible and super fast. In that moment the game is really fun. The problem is just that you have an energy bar to use that ability, and the amount of time you can use it is low. You can only regenerate it with items you find on the way, and these appear seldom. So the main ability, and the thing that makes the game fun, you're scared to use because for some jumps you seem to need it. The boss fights additionally have the big problem that you cannot really see if you made a hit, you just have to guess. A lot of problems in that game. I give the gameplay 1.5 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No. It has too many problems in the gameplay to be fun, and the presentation is also below average. Sorry Tasmanian Devil, you deserve better. I give the game overall 2 out of 5 points. Today we review Dig Dug on the original Game Boy. This game was developed by No Production and released in North America and the PAL regions in 1992. It is a port of the arcade game Dig Dug that released in 1982. This game showed me that Quest Fantasy Challenge for the Game Boy Color that we reviewed was from the concept just a cheap copy of Dig Dug. Dig Dug works in the same way. You dig around and kill all the enemies in a level, or, depending on the game mode, find keys in the level. You can kill enemies by letting heavy objects fall on them or by inflating them with air until they explode. That sounds like a horrible way to die. The presentation of the game is very simple. The dirt has some different textures, but that's about it from the difference between levels. There are only 2 kinds of enemies, and that's it. The background music is also repeating itself quickly, but it is getting faster during a level. The presentation might be close to the arcade, but it's nothing special. I give the presentation 1.5 out of 5 points. The gameplay is fine. You run around the level and kill the enemies. Some levels, in which you need to find the keys, have a bit challenging layouts, but in general the game is, well, very arcade-like obviously. It works and it is fun, but not that much. I give the gameplay 2 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No. It is a fine arcade game, but nothing that is really catching me today. I actually like Quest Fantasy Challenge more. I have to admit that it's just a cheap copy and that's 17 years after the original arcade game, but it is more fun. Especially because the enemies in Dig Dug fly so easily through the dirt. In Quest Fantasy Challenge I can and have to make the way for them, and most of the enemies cannot just float through the dirt. That is more fun and at least a bit strategic. I give the game overall 2 out of 5 points. Today we review Tokyo Senki Eiyuu Retsuden on the original Game Boy. This game was developed by Human Entertainment and released in 1992 exclusively in Japan. It is a grand strategy game in which you try to conquer all the other kingdoms, I guess? I don't speak Japanese and I tried to translate everything for this review, but it was not so easy. What I understood is that it is a grand strategy game in which multiple kingdoms fight against each other trying to conquer the rest. This game looks rather unspectacular, but not bad. I think, especially for the original Game Boy, it looks quite good. The overworld map is easy recognizable and the screens are clear. The background music is nice and sounds epic. I give the presentation 3.5 out of 5 points. The gameplay is quite deep for a Game Boy game. Every year has multiple different phases. In the first one you can develop your country and explore the surroundings to find new heroes. In the second phase you can hire soldiers, and in the third one you can attack the neighboring cities. Since I'm not fluent in Japanese, I have trouble judging the complexity of the game. What I understood impressed me. I give the gameplay 4 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No. You really need to understand Japanese to know what's happening. The game is reminding me of Nobunaga's ambition on the Game Boy, but it looks way better. So I'm a bit sad that I cannot understand more what is happening. Maybe someday we do a translation patch for it. I give the game overall 3.5 out of 5 points. Today we review Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, Back from the Sewers, or in Europe known as Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles, on the original Game Boy. This game was developed by Konami and released in 1991 and 1992 in North America, Japan and the PAL regions. It is a beat-em-up game with platform elements starring the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and it is the second of 3 Game Boy Ninja Turtles games. The game looks quite nice. Already the main menu has some nice going underground animation, and the backgrounds and sprites look well done and very recognizable. Additionally, there's some great background music, like a remix of the main theme. Since there are no colors, it is hard to see the difference of the turtles besides the weapons. I give the presentation 4 out of 5 points. The gameplay on the other hand is a bit below average. It is a standard beat 'em up with 4 different playable characters, the 4 turtles. Sadly, the difference in the playstyles between them is minimal, and the game is missing some of the basic beat-em-up things like throwing enemies and special moves. The enemies are respawning very quickly, which can be quite annoying. There are boss fights, special levels, and different style of levels like skateboard levels, so there's some variety in the levels, but the main fighting system is sadly feeling a bit weak. I give the gameplay 2.5 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? Not really. It is an okay beat-em-up game, but also not too special. The fighting doesn't have the right kind of pow, especially because the enemies normally die in one hit, so there are no combinations or anything like that. I give the game overall 3 out of 5 points. Today we review Tetris 2 on the original Game Boy. This game was developed by Nintendo and Toushi and released 1993 and 1994 everywhere. In this review you see the Super Game Boy version that added better music and colors. This game is the official successor of Tetris and is following a similar game style, but with some big changes. This time the blocks have different colors, and you destroy blocks not by making a full line, but by having a horizontal or vertical line of at least 3 blocks with the same color. The goal in every round is to destroy the pulsating orbs that are placed before. There are 2 game modes, one where you try to survive as long as you can, and one puzzle mode in which you try to beat the level with the least blocks. The game looks nice and clean. The presentation is doing nothing surprising, but it's doing its job. There is some nice background music and the game screen is clear. The only small issue with the presentation is that it can be hard to recognize the different colors of the blocks. I give the presentation 3.5 out of 5 points. The gameplay works good. The new concepts make sense and they give a very different feeling than the original Tetris. Which is not necessarily a good thing, but just looking at Tetris 2 for itself, it is a good puzzler with a solid gameplay. I give the gameplay 4 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? Yes. Tetris 2 is a good puzzler and worth your time if you're tired of the original. In many ways the game feels like the logical successor. There are more block variations, a new, more complicated way to destroy the blocks, and new objectives with the orbs. I still think Tetris 1 is better. The beauty of Tetris is because it is simple. So the successor is, at least for me, not nearly as good as Tetris. But that doesn't mean it's a bad game. I give the game overall 4 out of 5 points. Today we review Pocahontas on the original Game Boy. This game was developed by Blackpool Software and released 1996 in North America and the PAL regions. It is a platformer puzzler game in the style of Prince of Persia and is based on the Disney movie Pocahontas. You can switch between Pocahontas and the raccoon Miko to solve puzzles and save all the animals. The presentation is very simple. The backgrounds are mostly just simple white or black blocks with some trees on it. Without knowing the movie, I couldn't even say in which kind of area or biome the game plays. The sprite looks okay, but the animations all feel a bit clunky and slow. Sometimes it's hard to see where you can climb up, and the interactable objects look often out of place. The only positive part about the presentation is the Game Boy versions of Colors of the Wind. I give the presentation 1.5 out of 5 points. The gameplay is even worse than the presentation. You just get thrown into the game, no objective, no story, nothing. And then you run around and try to find things. The puzzles are mostly pushing blocks, and that's it. The controls feel very bad and the whole thing is no fun. The running around and jumping is just awkward, and the switching mechanic between Pocahontas and Miko, which is the only interesting thing the game has, is mostly pointless. I give the gameplay 1 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No. The game sucks. A lot. I'm a big Disney fan, but I have the feeling Blackpool Software is not. Otherwise, I would have put a little bit more effort into that. I give the game overall 1 out of 5 points. Today we review Quiz Sekai Warschau by Shoubai on the original Game Boy. This game was developed by Sun L and released 1992 exclusively in Japan. It is a quiz game based on a Japanese TV show. The presentation of the game is quite nice. They took some effort to make different characters and a little start cutscene. The design of the quiz itself is rather simple, but it's doing its job fine. I give the presentation 3 out of 5 points. The gameplay is what you would expect. It is a quiz game, and with that the basic gameplay is clear. They ask questions and you answer. It was a bit hard for me since the questions are timed against the NPC player and I needed some time to translate them. I didn't see anything special from a gameplay part. I give the gameplay 2 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No. You really need to speak Japanese to answer the questions on time, but even if you do, there's nothing very interesting. It is a standard quiz game. I give the game overall 2.5 out of 5 points. Today we review Splits, on Japan known as Splits Nigaoi 15 game on the original Game Boy. This game was developed by Enigma Variations and released in 1993. It is a puzzle game. The game uses a typical sliding puzzle as a main gameplay, but with some funny twists. You need to get the tiles first, and there are obstacles like opening and closing doors on the walls, where tiles can fly through, or tiles that don't belong to the pictures that you need to get rid of. The presentation of the game is very basic. You have a picture of a famous person as a background and that is it. There's not much more presentation than this. There is a little start cutscene and some background music, but not much more to say. I give the presentation 1.5 out of 5 points. The gameplay is very basic too. It is a sliding puzzle game that is in every second video game. The obstacles are more like a little bit annoying and that is it. They are not game changing in any way. The game is more like a mini game than a full game. Sometimes some annoying things happen, like a bomb that you need to get rid of in a certain time or you will lose one life. That is all the gameplay there is. I give the gameplay 1.5 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No. It is not interesting in any way. This sliding puzzle you will see in so many video games already, and this game offers nothing more besides being even more annoying than the puzzle normally is. I give the game overall 1.5 out of 5 points. Today we review Kamen Rider SD, Hashire Mighty Riders on the original Game Boy. This game was developed by Yukata and released 1993 exclusively in Japan. It is a top-down motorcycle racer game in which you avoid obstacles, kick your enemies and try to make it to the goal without exploding. To do that you play in a team of 3 or a single fly bug thing and play Rally on Grand Prix mode. Both modes are gameplay-wise identically. In the team of 3, every rider does their own level and they are not at the same time on the course. The presentation of the game is not bad, but very basic. It is a top-down view and the course have some little background elements like streets or jets. The cover of the game looks very cool and the game has even in the races background music. That is, somehow, quite rare for such racing games. The special items you can get during the race look very easy. I give the presentation 3.5 out of 5 points, mainly because of the background music and the cool cover. The gameplay is exactly what you would expect from such a game. You can accelerate or kick the enemy out of the way, which sounds cooler than it is, and you avoid the obstacles to not reach 0 life points. Unlike many games, here it is not so much about the placement in the race, but rather to survive until the end. That makes the other drivers more to obstacles that can cost HP than really competing racers. Something a bit more unique is the ability to hide the UI to see more of the course, and that you can move the camera forward and backwards to see a bit further ahead or behind you. That are cool quality of life features that not many games of that kind think of in the Game Boy era. I give the gameplay 3 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No. It is an okay racer, but really not more. I give the game overall 3 out of 5 points.